What's going on, everybody? Turning into another edition of Cutting the Red Tape. I definitely appreciate you guys for joining this podcast. We're continuing to grow steadily but strongly with all the guests that are coming on and helping me out. I definitely do appreciate them. Please do me a favor, like, share, and subscribe basically to this podcast. Basically trying to get 1,000 subscribers so we can have a continuing funding source to be able to support veterans and service members out there. Most of y'all know the work I do. Pretty much no BS, cut through the red tape, do what I have to do to cut veterans and service members, to support veterans and service members. So please do me a favor and subscribe. So without further ado, I have a special guest in the building who's joining me today, and I'm going to let her introduce herself. Go ahead.
Thank you so much, Marcus. And first, I want to say I really am inspired by the work that you're doing. Sharing veteran stories and asking them questions from their perspective really just digs deep to the unique opportunities that veterans can provide from their perspective. So thank you for having me today.
Thank you so much.
My name is Kassie Diaz. I'm a Marine Corps veteran. I live down in Tucson, Arizona. I'm from San Antonio, so not born and raised in Tucson.
Okay.
From San Antonio. I joined the Marines at 17, just 2 days after I graduated from high school. I actually had a full ride scholarship to go to University of Texas, and I chose not to. And I recently actually was asked why. And I think when you think about what veterans do as they age, we're not going to go into details of how old I am, but as they age, when we get asked, why, even from the younger generation, my answer has actually changed over time, right? And not so much has changed, but because I've learned more about myself and become more in tune with why did I do some of the things, and then maybe just didn't understand why I did them. I just did them. I made a choice and did it. But I think now, today, I chose to go into the Marine Corps because choosing a path in college gave me anxiety, and accepting that full ride scholarship, it was just too much. I didn't know what I wanted to major in. They wanted me, you had to choose a major, you could opt in to choose a minor, and it just felt like making a lot of decisions at one time that I wasn't ready to make for myself. And I had support around me. I had my mom, and she really talked to me about just different things. And of course, she was pushing me to go and take the scholarship and go, right? And go, so super proud of me. But I think there was just a lot of anxiety with it that I didn't want, and I didn't want to face that. And so going into the military was exciting for me. It was something new. Obviously when the recruiters come, it's the quick tidbit of, you're always going to have a paycheck. You're always going to have a roof over your head. You're always going to have clothes. You're always going to have all these things, right? And you get to travel. And I was like, okay, I'm in. That's it. I'm just going to go. So I wasn't supposed to leave though until later. And so what's really cool is my recruiter called me 2 days after graduation and said, your ASVAB score was X. And so it qualified you for this weird job that I don't even know how Marines do this, because I don't know anyone that does this. It's such a small MOS, but it's a UAV operator. It's a drone pilot. And so he was like, but it looks like if you don't accept now, I don't know if this is going to open up to you again, but it was one of those things. Remember, back in the day, you couldn't choose your job. You just chose the area you wanted to go into. And I chose aviation. That was the only thing I could choose. And so he was like, it looks like you either take this in the next 2 days or you don't go. And I was like, well, and I will tell you, my biggest concern was that I didn't change the oil in my own car. And I was like, you want me to operate an airplane? Like, what does this look like? Like, what is this job? I was a little bit nervous too, but I was like, it sounds really cool. I knew that the military was going to pick me a job or give me offerings. And so that gave me like less anxiety than going to school. And so I was like, you know what, let's do it. So I left to boot camp. Boot camp was a hoot, right? I mean, I'm sure every Marine has a story about boot camp. It was an experience. It was what it was. And I am pretty proud that I graduated as an honor grad. So I was meritoriously promoted out of boot camp. Really exciting.
Lance corporal or?
Well, I actually went in as a private.
Oh, you went in private? Okay.
I did. I went in as a private because I had no ROTC background. And so when I got promoted, I became a PFC.
Okay.
And though, I will say, I do wish at some points that I would have known a little bit more about the points you can earn before you go to boot camp.
Yes, me too.
Retrospectively, but it's fine. It probably would have given me anxiety too, and I'd probably still have been in the same shoes I was in. So it is what it is.
Right.
But yeah, so, and then I went off to, the Marines, we do, a Marine Corps combat skills training, and then we go to our units. And so I will share, and I know you're native to Arizona, Marcus. So if anyone on your podcast has never been to Fort Huachuca, Arizona, it's a mouthful. You might not say it right the first time. And I'll
Yes.
tell you, the Marines made fun of me. They basically were like, "You're going to an Army base." And I was like, "Why am I going to an Army base?" Well, because the MOS was so small at the time that we were going through our school cohorts together with an Army unit that was already established. So really cool. I've been out to Fort Huachuca so many times now, and we're just super native to it, but that's where school was. And then back then, when you finished school, you could only go to two places. You could go to Cherry Point, North Carolina, or 29 Palms, California. And I was kind of excited because I was like, oh, well, North Carolina or California. I want to go to California.
Right.
And so I get to go to California, and I'm like, oh my God, who would have chosen 29 Palms? No one. No one chooses 29 Palms, California. So
Right.
I felt completely naive and out of control, and I should have known better, but it's fine. So yeah, really, really great opportunities out of California. I had a lot of fun. I mean, obviously driving to the coast was only a 2.5 hour drive, if
Yeah.
that. And so a lot of opportunities out of there. I played soccer for the All Marine Corps soccer team in 2001.
Oh, awesome.
Yeah, that was a great time. I will say I'm pretty sad because now it's really hard to find pictures from back then. I mean, we didn't really take pictures back then, like this
Mhm.
new generation, but I've like reached out and tried to find pictures, and I don't know, they just don't exist. So I've been pretty bummed about that, but that was a lot of fun. But I was playing soccer for the Marine Corps when 9/11 hit. So as a Marine sitting in a hotel with all of the female Marine Corps soccer team, we weren't in the same hotel as the other services were at the time, but I remember the master sergeant that was our coach. He basically rounded us all up at 06. Our soccer showtime was 07, so we were all awake, but he came and knocked on all of our doors, and he was calling us out, and he was pretty loud, pretty drill instructor like, and so we all knew something was wrong. Kind of still gives me goosebumps right now, but we all kind of knew something was happening in that moment. And so all of us, obviously we're running out in our PT gear, and his door was open, and all of the females kind of congregated in to see what was going on. And it's probably the quietest I've ever seen anyone in a room with that large amount of personnel. Other people had come out because they heard him banging on our doors, and other people were in the room with us who we didn't even know them. They were just, other hotel stayers. But we
So
kind of watched in disbelief.
it's one of those things where, if you were aware at that time, like everybody can remember what they were doing, who they were with, what was going on, and at that time, truth be told, I'm sitting there, I barely even knew what the World Trade Centers were. I'm just sitting there watching these planes, just hit the World Trade. I'm like, what is going, like, we're being attacked. It's time to go. Like, it was crazy. So I can only imagine, and I wasn't in at that time, so I can only imagine what was going through like the military's mind as far as anybody who was in, like, okay, man, it's go time.
Absolutely. No, I completely agree. And I was only 18 at the time. I was still pretty young. I think I might have been the youngest on the soccer team even at the time. And you could hear, we had a couple officers on the team, and they were, kind of spitting Marine Corps knowledge right away, and considerations, and what we were going to do and how this was going to work, and we were probably going to be called to fight first. And I mean, so there was a lot of conversation hitting everyone at the same time, and what that was going to look like. And quickly the master sergeant just dismissed us and said, go back, pack your bags, pack your stuff, probably going to hit the airport quick. So it was a pretty quick moment, and it was a lot, of just thought on, like, I joined the Marine Corps for the GI Bill benefits and for the future, and for, just to kind of gain experience and life knowledge and what that was going to look like. And I will share, like, in that moment, that's not what I expected. It's not what I thought, but I can share that in that moment, I did feel prepared. I know that may sound weird, but I think about it sometimes, and people have asked me how I felt or what I was thinking at the time. I felt prepared for whatever was going to come next. I wasn't married, I didn't have children at the time. And so just as a human in my experience going through boot camp and all the training I'd done up to that point, I felt prepared, and it wasn't very chaotic. I know a lot of individuals talk about the chaos they felt during the moment, and I didn't. And I don't know if it was because I was always, from really that point forward, surrounded by Marines. We always were together. We obviously always run in packs usually when we're in the Marine Corps. Just always felt comfortable in our training, in our backgrounds, and our understanding of what was our expectation as Marines first. So it's taken me a while to share that, because I don't know that I ever knew in some of those initial moments how I felt or what I thought. But we were quickly, just like everyone else, alerted to what we were going to do and what our next steps were going to be. So when I got back to 29 Palms, when I got back to our unit, we actually had received, an order to increase our numbers and strength by MOS. And so at the time, I was an internal UAV operator. I flew drones from inside, computer cockpit, if you will, right? We've all seen different movies today, so everyone knows an internal operator is sitting in a Connex box somewhere with a computer setup, right? And so that was me initially, an operator who could fly the plane, but also a payload operator who could operate the payload of the aircraft. So I could do both of those skill sets. What it couldn't do is take off the aircraft. So once upon a time, before AI hit UAVs, we needed a runway, and you took off the aircraft using what they would call an external pilot. And so I like to share the story. It's kind of funny, you'll laugh, but they invited all of, so I was the only female in my shop, in our S3 shop at the time in operations. And I still remember to this day, the staff sergeant invited all of the corporals and sergeants to go to the flight line so that he could do a skills-based evaluation for nominations for external pilot school. And I was sitting at the table. I was only a Lance Corporal at the time, and so I just kind of sat there. I didn't move, and so of course I got yelled at and hounded because I didn't move quick enough. But I didn't think I was being invited to this event, so I didn't get up initially. But obviously I forgot that we had gear and airplanes and fuel and all the things. So I definitely got yelled at for not getting up fast enough, right? And so I end up helping with all the equipment to get it out, to take it to the flight line where we were going to go. It was really just a dry lake bed, but it was where we were going to go to test people in aircraft and evaluate skills. And I remember sitting on the back of his tailgate because he had a older model Chevy, and it had like a bed on top because he often had the airplanes in the back. And I'm laughing because, listen, Marine conversation is the best. If you have skin and if you can roll with the punches, I mean, if you have your own punches, you probably should if you're with this group of people. But listen, it's great and it's hilarious. And so I got caught laughing too loud after 3 out of 4 of the airplanes crashed into the ground. And they're just MiGs. They're like foam airplanes, And I got caught laughing too loud, and the staff sergeant said, "Oh, you think that this is funny?" And so he kind of twisted it on me, right? Like this is defending the nation. This is what our infantrymen they need and they're using today. And no, staff sergeant, no. And so he called me over and he said, "Let's go." And I was like, "Oh no, that's not why I was laughing," right? Like, so then I was like super confused on what you're supposed to say in that moment, right? But I went over and he handed me what you would call a flight control box. He handed me the control of the aircraft, and it has a cord connected to it. So he has the master box, I have the buddy box or the student box. And he says, "If you listen to me, you will not fail." And I remember that to this day because he specifically looked at me and he said, "If you listen to me, you will not fail." And I was like, this guy's nuts. He's giving me the control of the aircraft. I'm going to end up just like these other guys. Everyone's going to laugh at me, right? And so super nervous, but he explains to me what the controls are. I have a rudder stick. I have my engine to control my throttle. I have ailerons, and I have my elevator. And so he's walking me through the controls of the air. It's just like a manned aircraft. Has all the surfaces, all the controls. It's everything the same. However, you're just looking at it and you're flying it from that perspective. Never flown an RC aircraft in my entire life. Never done anything by, hand-eye coordination from this perspective. And so I was like, oh God, this is going to be so bad. They're going to laugh. Thank God it's not the social age of today where everyone had a cell phone, right?
Right.
So, I said, okay. And so took off the aircraft. I'm sitting here listening to him, standing, I think I took a step closer to him so I can make sure I heard him better. But next thing you know, I rolled out base to final, just listening to him, and I landed the aircraft on the first try.
Nice.
So, again, a little bit of Marine lingo in there that we won't say, but
yeah.
I was nominated to go to school, and I was kind of in shock because there were no female external pilots ever in the military, not just in the Marines. No pressure,
Right.
right?
Nothing at all. You got it.
So really nervous, but even in that moment, or in those times when you would hear the officers talk about, ramping up our MOS and ramping up the people that were qualified in the different perspectives, it was really like a call to duty. It felt more like a call to action. It felt more like, you can't fail this. Like, we're counting on you as a number.
Yeah.
And I'll share, I hear a lot of people say a lot of times, I'm just a number. I'm just a number. I'm just a warm body. I'm just whatever. We all are. But if you take that one number out of the whole breaks, or the whole's not as effective as it could be, or it's not meeting the 100% idea or vision of whatever group you're a part of or organization you're a part of. So 100% know where you stand as a number wherever you are, but also understand that if you're in a space, it's because somebody wants you there, somebody called you there, someone needs you there. And so I take that, I bring that with me, because I think it was the first time I felt that. I think it was the first time I felt that pressure of a call to action or a call to duty in that sense. And got to go to school in Pensacola, Florida. Listen, I could have stayed there forever and ever.
Right.
Have you been to Pensacola?
I have not, no, but I can only imagine.
Oh, I do think it might be the prettiest beaches I've ever been to. Pensacola, Fort Walton Beach, some of those beaches just really pretty. I don't know what they look like today, but listen, they were so pretty.
Right.
But I was stationed down there, huge Air Force presence, as you can imagine.
Yeah.
Eglins down there also, but huge Air Force presence. And I was really excited because my headmate, whenever we got down there, we were in our barracks, and my headmate was a female pilot. And I remember her telling me one day, she came up, and I was drone pilot, totally different, not the same, right? Like, they didn't even like put us in the same conversation, right? Mm-hmm. But I remember her telling me one day, she stopped, and we didn't really talk a lot. It was a lot of, just quiet head nods and, acknowledgments, but she was an officer and I was enlisted. So obviously I addressed her respectfully, but I remember her telling me one day, I was getting close to the end of my time and ready for my check ride. And she just looked at me and she said, "Don't fuck this up." Yes, ma'am. Right? I mean, okay. But I think even in that moment, like going into my check ride and hearing her in the background, it was a moment of recognition and realization that people are rooting for you. They just might not have a lot to say. People are rooting for you and they might not say anything at all. Don't always have an expectation that someone has to cheer for you to go forward and do good things. And even but it made me realize that. And so 5 was pretty cool, really exciting. Again, not like the social age for today, so there was no pomp and circumstance, right? Because we were going to war. So basically qualified there in Pensacola. Once I was finished, went back to 29 Palms, and our unit was getting ready to go. And so we ramped up in the unit. We all stood in line for our shots, right? Like today, if it was today's environment with COVID, we would have all gotten the COVID vaccination like 5 times every 5 days, just to make sure none of us got COVID when we were gone. But that was the kind of environment it was. It was, just medically getting ready, getting our gear ready, making sure everything was good to go. And so we left, we went to Kuwait first. Our tour was Kuwait first. During that time, we were Operation Enduring Freedom. And when we first got there, the males that I went to school with were offered the opportunity to fly in Kuwait and be on the flight schedule right away, and I was not. And I still remember the staff sergeant that had nominated me to go to school when I came back. He really was not just mentoring me, but he started advocating for me. And he started saying, she's qualified the same as these guys. She went through the same training, the same as these guys. We can't have sponsored her to go to this training just to turn around and say, we're not going to let her fly because there's never been a female and she might crash it. Well, absolutely, but so might the male that went, right? They did the same training, they had the same opportunity, and I really started to hear him, and what started to feel like fighting for me, and for me, what felt like too much, like, why does he have to go to bat for me every time there's a conversation? Why did they even send me if they weren't going to allow me to fight in this capacity? Why all these things? And very respectful. Obviously, I was enlisted. I said that already, but I would be very respectful in front of leadership. But I have a journal, and I kept this journal, and I actually pulled it out a couple of years ago, and I feel very proud today that I was mature about it and didn't act out and wasn't reactive to the conversation, because I will share, it did lead to me finally having the opportunity to fly. It did lead to me finally having the opportunity to prove myself, and when I got that opportunity, I did. But I didn't fight the coming of age of the concept of allowing me to be where I was because I'd earned it. I didn't fight that because sometimes I think, and looking back again, as we said, when minorities are introduced to different situations, it's not so, I don't know that it's so much that people don't believe we can do it. I think it's more that people aren't sure if we have the confidence to be executors of our task, and not just execute it well, but execute it with confidence and knowledge and all the things that we need. And so, even in reflecting on it, today, I often tell myself, mentors and mentees have great relationships today. I think probably even better sometimes when I look around than what we did in the early 2000s. But what I also see is that most mentees are over mentored. There's probably more people mentoring minorities today than ever. But how many mentees are sponsored? How many mentees have a mentor that says, I'm going to put you in this bucket, and we've never had anyone that looks like you in this bucket, right? And then you have to have all the leadership that's observing that agree to that decision, which we all know probably it's not, right? It could be like a UFC fight where the rounds went 3-2 and someone won, but that still means the other person went to bat. The other, somebody said no. And so when you think about it, it's usually not a unanimous vote when it comes to minorities. And so I think about that a lot. I think about what I went through and those opportunities to grow and be mature, right? In a situation that wasn't especially in my favor. And I'm very proud because I did have the opportunity to fly in Iraq. Our numbers did become so low that they needed me. I became a requirement to the flight schedule. I became someone that went on the flight schedule with consistency. And something that you always say is to show up, right? Mm-hmm. You say a lot, show up. And you say a lot, don't just talk the talk. You have to walk the walk, right? You have to be there. You have to show up. It's not about all the things you say you can do. It's about your performance and what you can actually do. And I'm proud because when I did receive the opportunity, I did it with a seriousness and coming from a knowledge base and an experience base. And I wanted to show them that I was confident. I wanted to show them that I was confident in all of those that taught me and instructed me and believed in me, and most of all sponsored me to be where I was. And so just very proud to say I was successful in that and that it worked out. And then, we finished our mission in Iraq and came home, in the fall of that year. And so after that experience, I did go on to get married, and I had a child, and said, I don't know if I want to go back overseas to Iraq again with, my life forming and starting to form, because that
Right.
perspective would be so different, right? And I know it's very different to go overseas and be in a war zone when you have no responsibilities around you,
Exactly.
right? You're not married, you don't have kids.
Yep.
Maybe your parents depend on you, but even then, like, I think that parental vision and expectation is still a little bit different than when you're married and have kids. And so did decide to get out. I was going to go to school full time, super excited to go to school full time.
Now you
And
were ready. No anxiety
yes,
this time.
I was like, okay, now I'm ready. And so that's what I was going to do. And this community, unmanned aircraft systems, is really that small. And so I got out of the military. They couldn't convince me to stay. They offered me quite a few things to stay. And I said, no, 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 that's okay. I'm good. Got out, and Northrop Grumman was flying Hunter down in Sierra Vista. So again, we're talking about Fort Huachuca area.
Right.
They were flying the Hunter UAS down in Sierra Vista. And so I got a call from one of the managers down there. And he, you know, probably in today's day and age, I'm not going to say who it was, probably would be fired for this conversation. But he called me and he said, "Are you Kassie Diaz?" And I said, "Yes." And he said, "You just got out of the Marine Corps?" And I said, "Yes." And he said, "You're the female that's the external pilot?" And I said, "Yes." And he said, "You're a female." "Yes." "Are you sure you can do this? You can fly. You've done this. Like, you physically did this. Like, you have flight hours in
Oh my
combat,
gosh.
you know?" And I sat there on the phone and I thought to myself, are you even allowed to ask me these questions?
Right.
Right? Like, are you allowed to?
All
Uh,
right.
what does this even look like for you? Who's your HR representative? You know what I mean? Like, what is this? That's what my head was thinking, right?
All
But
right.
then the other side of me said, you called me and you obviously have my resume from somewhere. I didn't apply. So call around and ask.
Right.
Let me know. So I hung up, right? I was like, but of course I told my husband, I'm like, can you believe this? You
Right.
know,
So it's a
and so I'm
slap in the
all,
face.
yeah, I'm like all activated, you know, like all of the senses are activated. And so I get a call back, and it's a call back for an interview. And so I said, okay. So went in for the interview, and he basically said, you know, I don't, and he did tell me, he was like, you know, when it comes to minorities today, there's, you know, I really think DE&I, diversity, equity, and inclusion, the considerations to hiring more minorities was really conversation that was just starting. You know, still, you know, 2005-ish timeframe, we weren't really saying minority, we weren't really saying diversity, we weren't really saying, oh, we want to hire more women. And so, you know, when he called me, it was like, I don't know what's going on, but there's like a push for me to start having, you know, metrics on men in my workforce and women in my workforce. And I don't have any women. So, I mean, if you want the job, I don't think I can't even not hire you. Right. And I was like, what
Right.
does that mean? And so I was like, I mean, part of me feels like I was getting the job because of that. But then the other part of me was like, obviously I have the skills to transfer in. So I took the job. I took the job to see what it was going to be, and I got qualified on the Hunter aircraft. So again, inside first, as I, it's not a computer pilot, right? But when I explain it to like kids in high school, I'm like, it's like being at a computer and you're playing a video game, but not, right? And so,
Right.
you know, I did that, and also a payload operator, and Hunter was bigger, so cooler payloads, right? We should probably say that, but
Right.
cooler stuff on that side. And then, and so that was really cool. I went on to, you know, be a maintenance pilot, an instructor pilot, do some cool engineering things with Hunter. So that was really cool, human factors type stuff. And I deployed overseas as a contractor and came back. That experience was very different in deploying as a contractor versus deploying as a Marine. That experience is very different in a lot of ways. You know, some of them just mostly, right, we're not allowed to fight. Geneva Conventions rules for civilians and contractors are very different when you're deployed overseas. So that gave me some anxiety, but, you know, really just seeing that there were a lot of personnel in the same situation, in the same boat. So generally we stayed on an airfield, and it's a pretty safe environment. But left that system and went over to fly Gray Eagle. So I flew Gray Eagle for a little bit of time down in Fort Huachuca. Took a shot at some unmanned aircraft business development. I don't think I'm there, Marcus. Definitely,
Right.
probably not going to be a business development person in my future. I did enjoy planning, you know, dog and ponies per se, like the fly offs where you get to come in and look at the product, and leadership comes in, and you know, the Army and the Navy and the Marines would come and they'd talk to you and ask you about different things. I thought that was pretty cool. but it was a lot of talking, so going back to your talk the talk, walk the walk, right? There was a
Right.
lot of talking, and you weren't really demonstrating sometimes what the reality was of the situation. And I believe in demonstration. I believe in execution and the reality of what you're doing in those instances. And so I just decided business development wasn't for me. So went back. My last aircraft that I flew was for L3 Harris, OWT Global, and it's the new FTUAS concept that the military has been really revamping for UAVs so that we can be runway agnostic. And so that's kind of the sad part, right? Like in 2015, Hunter down in Fort Huachuca flew its last flight. I was really excited to be the pilot in command for that aircraft when it flew its last flight. But what that really signified is the end of an era for external pilots. So as you're going through these different aircraft sets, being one of the first engineering flight pilots for this specific aircraft coming in for an FTUAS variant was somber for me, to say the least, because it really made me realize these aircraft are already operating all over the world. They don't need a runway. They don't need an external pilot. Some of them in engineering considerations have an external pilot, but it's a safety feature. It's not an operational feature. So when you see them deployed, you'll see an aircraft maybe in the middle of a field that takes off vertically like you would see a helicopter, and then at some altitude transitions to forward flight to continue on as a fixed wing aircraft for the mission. And I got to tell you, obviously, as a tech geek, watching it and seeing it is always exciting. And it's a thrill to be on the flight line, but I also think I was kind of sad to watch this generation of aircraft take over.
Right.
And so just being a part of, that aircraft and its first 2 years existence was really amazing. And then talking to Raytheon now on my path, I feel like I've kind of transformed my path, and now it's more of a leadership, awareness, engagement, strategy, and considerations for how to bring people into STEM environments, working for the DoD contractors, companies like Raytheon.
Explain to people what STEM is for those who may not know.
Oh, sorry. Okay, STEM. So science, technology, engineering, and math.
Okay.
And, we look at these considerations today and we talk about the diversity of our workforce still. And we talk about these considerations, but going back to my thing, I didn't want to go to school out of high school. I didn't want to choose what that was going to look like. And I couldn't have told you I was going to go into such like a technological field, right? Something that really down in the weeds is a computer-based technology with automated intelligence and all these things. When you think about it, I was like, I just fly an airplane, right? And so I was like, what do you do? And so, but when you look at the education behind it and the engineers that we have, and to think about a human mind created this concept once upon a time, back in the 70s,
Wow.
right? Back before it really became big, if you think about it conceptually, it's people. I mean, I can even remember, like I was sharing with you, like in 2000, people were like, what's a drone pilot? What are you going to do? How do you do that? Or, and the Marines laughed because they were like, we don't even know what your job is. There must be like 2 of you in the fleet,
Right.
And I was like, oh my gosh. But, to how it's grown today is phenomenal. And to think that, these concepts started 50s, 60s, 70s time frame is just crazy. And you just watch the evolution of technology. But we really have to continue to shape that foundation and that pipeline of person and human that wants to be a part of the next generation of technology. Because where we are today is so foundational that it has to continue to increase. And so when you think about that and you think about where you are, obviously I was speaking earlier, I don't want to share my age, but I think when you reach a certain time in your life, a certain phase, maybe go through some different experiences, you start to look around and say, if I don't help in areas where I see gaps, if I don't have conversations with people in areas where I think they're looking to have that conversation, or, for you and what you're doing today with veterans, like people probably approach you and they, even though you scream, ask me for help, ask me for what you need, people still probably come to you and stare at you and don't know how to ask for help, right? Or they still come to you and say, Marcus, how do I ask for help? And they ask you how to do that. And I've looked around lately and I see gaps and I see where people need help. And for me, in a lot of ways, right, like when I mentioned in 2015, the Hunter aircraft went away from having external pilots to more of an automated takeoff and landing system. It also retired the aircrafts 2018, 2019, where the entire fleet of aircraft was retired. And that fleet included military and civilians. So there were a lot of people, I think, that just really thought they were safe in life because they retired from the military, went right into the skill base they had in the military, and it served a phenomenal career for them. But then what's next?
Yeah.
Most of us didn't have degrees. Most of us didn't go back to school because the military provided such a phenomenal skill set for us. And it was something that when we got out, translated, right? And meeting a lot of military personnel when we get out, not everyone's that lucky. Not everyone's lucky enough to have a skill set that translates. Not everyone's, and maybe during that time, if you would have put me in like a professional environment, you would have probably kicked me out of that environment because I was still flight line, right? I was still, fleet ready, ground ready, deployment ready. But what I realized from that is that we didn't all go back to school. We didn't all get and grow the skills that we needed to be successful in a professional environment, right? And so we would all complain about those managers that would come out and those managers that would talk to us. But what we didn't do is we didn't understand what those managers were doing to become successful professionally. And we didn't maybe rise to the challenge. So, I'm super proud to say that, today I'm going to school for my PhD. I did, start that process for myself. And it's very eye-opening when you start to research and have conversations and talk to people, because you see so many people with drive and determination and grit, and it goes unnoticed, not because, for anything that they did. It goes unnoticed because they're not putting themselves in the light. They're not putting themselves out there. They're not exposing themselves to external factors, right? And so, some veterans that I've come across, they feel like they're failing because their audience isn't that big, but maybe they're not doing what you're doing, Marcus. They're not humbly asking other veterans to share their stories and their why so that everyone can grow from that. They're not on YouTube. They're not on social media. They hate Facebook. They're not doing this because whatever reason, but those opportunities are opportunities to grow your audience, your network. It's opportunities to grow, the nonprofit why you exist. And so I try to share that sometimes, different perspectives, different things, but veterans, we are a hardcore yet sensitive species, right? And I tell people that all the time. We're big teddy bears at the end of the day, right? All of us have a big heart, right? We started our lives at some point with an intent to serve. 100%, all of us, whether you joined for school reasons, for later when you figured out who you wanted to be when you grew up, like me, or whatever the reason was, the bottom line is we all decided and signed that line knowing that it could mean our life in that period of time. It was very clear that we all signed that dotted line with an understanding that the end result could mean our life. And I mean, even at 17, I understood that. And it was very clear to me that I was working for someone, and I clearly belonged to the government until the day that I didn't. Right. And, I think those perspectives of understanding coming full circle for me, where I am today in my life, it's huge for me. It's not an option today to not give back, to talk to veterans, to mentor them, to help with a resume here and there, to have a conversation about how do I interview? What do I say? What can this look like? I'm in intelligence and I don't know how to verbalize X, right? Or I was an infantryman and I led 4 platoons and we did X operations, and I don't know how to verbalize that. I don't know how to talk about what my experiences look like and translate that. So, today it's very important for me to do that in my role actively, but really embodying that as a person and sharing that. So
So what would you say to the young 16, 15, you know, women, minorities out there who may want to get into a STEM field, but they say, you know what, I don't even know if I'm going to get the opportunity. I don't even know if I can do this. You know, what would you say to encourage somebody like that?
You know, um, very recently I was asked this question from someone who said, why would I put myself in a room when no one looks like me? No one is going to advocate for me. No one is going to mentor me. No one is going to sponsor me. And so I shared back with them, and I did share, and I said, a lot of organizations today, based on my research, based on real facts, this isn't me coming at you, giving you an idea of something, real facts. Organizations today are trying to, and we'll use the female as a statistic. Many organizations today are trying to push for females to be half of their population in whatever industry it is, engineering, finance, talent acquisition. They're shooting for the population to be 50% male and 50% female, however you identify. In engineering specifically, if in engineering, 20% of freshmen that hit the university level are female today, and we understand that usually at least 50% of those females drop out by the time they're juniors in college.
Wow.
We are accepting and understanding that 10% of females will graduate with a STEM degree today. So if I set this goal for 50% of my staff in engineering to be female by 2030, does that sound realistic to you? It doesn't. But if you accept as a challenge that it's going to be hard, it's not going to be easy, and the path in front of you, it's going to take work. It means you have to invest in yourself. You have to have confidence in yourself. You're going to have to do the work to get yourself to where you want to go, right? If you can do that, take the path. But the other thing that I offer, and I've really been offering this a lot lately, because I see a lot of people take a path that they want to take, or it's the path less traveled, but they're not that person. They don't have the grit, and they don't have the initiative, and they don't have the drive to do that daily, right? And when you acknowledge that and you see that, I also offer the advice to do what makes you happy. Do what gives you job satisfaction. You know, even to this consideration with what you offer veterans today, Marcus, you're doing something that gives you fulfillment. And there is nothing that anyone can offer you that's going to take that away from you. That is your confidence. That's your space. It's what you're creating, and it brings you fulfillment. So even if your day job, if it didn't bring you job satisfaction, what you're doing right now in this volunteer opportunity might give you enough fulfillment that it makes you not care about your job. It doesn't matter. I can do anything from 8 to 5, but after 5, it's on, right? I'm going to do what I want. And that want and that need and that fun piece to your life might be enough. But the other side is, if you are someone who wants to do something different, live outside the box, the only one that can make that choice and go for it is you. But commit.
Yep. And I say this often. A lot of people don't realize this. They get shocked when I say, you know, I do this all for free. I don't get paid to assist veterans. I don't get paid to have my phone on 24/7. I don't get paid to do any of that. And they say, well, you do so much and you do so much. I'm like, yeah. I was like, just imagine if I did this full time, if I was able to support myself with this, it would be over. Like, but you know, again, this gives me fulfillment. I love what I do. I feel I have a calling for it. And I always tell my people that, hey, you know, Veterans Fighter 9 might not be around next year or whatever due to funding, but if I helped one veteran, it was worth it. And I'll just leave it at that.
Absolutely. And I think that's important. And I know that you don't share that a lot. You don't say that a lot, that, you know, your group is nonprofit and you don't pay yourself, you know. It's my off Friday, you know. And I do a lot of this in my off Friday time. And, just to your point, right? Like most veterans that are helping and they're digging the trenches and doing the work, they don't talk a lot about what they do, and they don't share that a lot. And, to your point, I wish they did. Sometimes I wish more veterans just shared that positivity and shared the happiness of what they were spreading into the world with other people, to show other people, or just to make other people think about you, just to make other people think like right now when I was sharing, your phrase, walk the walk, talk the talk.
Yep.
There's a shirt on Baseballism right now that says BB the BB. And if you know baseball, it's walk the walk. A BB is a
Okay.
walk, you know? But
Okay.
like the first time I saw it, I was like, what's BB the BB? Hold on. I gotta think about it, right? And then I
All
was
right.
like, oh, it's walk the walk. That's such a cool shirt,
All right. All
But you
right.
had to think about it, and I was like, that's really cool. But it's everywhere you go. It doesn't matter if you're playing sports, it doesn't matter if you're in the military, it doesn't matter, if you're in college and you're pursuing an engineering degree. That's really hard. Some things are really hard and you're gonna have to work hard. You have to choose how you react. And these types of opportunities, what you're doing, the maturity in this, I wish it just spread like wildfire and everyone just wanted to jump in on it, to your point.
All right. I have to say that your story is absolutely incredible, from, someone who was 17 years old and a little bit of anxiety and, maybe on the fence a little bit about, going to college, and then you end up doing the military, and, all of a sudden being given this opportunity. And when you stepped up to the plate, you hit a home run, and, now your career is just, taking off, and very, very inspiring for, young women out there, young Marines, people who want to be Marines in general, and in STEM is just fantastic. So I love the story. I thank you for it.
Thank you so much, Marcus. I appreciate you, and I'll keep watching.
Absolutely, absolutely. So there you all have it. I mean, you have a fantastic story right here for any of you all wanting to jump into STEM. You have the perfect freaking path right there, lay it out for you. It's not going to be easy. You're going to have to work for it. You're going to have to put your best foot forward. You may have some failure, but guess what? Failure happens. You learn from failure. Failure is not a bad thing. A lot of people get that mixed up. Failure is not a bad thing. You learn from failure.
Yes, I love that message, Marcus.
So keep pushing, keep striving, keep reaching for the stars, and keep pushing. So with that being said, please all do me a favor again. Like I said, like, share, and subscribe. Please help us out if you can. We're trying to hit 1,000 subscribers. And again, thank you all. God bless.
Thank you.